Good afternoon. Today's lecture is going to be on regulatory issues surrounding the use of companion animals in clinical investigations, trials, and studies. Introduction. Companion animals such as dogs and cats play vital roles in clinical research, and this research are governed by regulations to ensure ethical treatment of the companion animals. The regulations aims to balance progresses that are intended with scientific research with animal welfare. Therefore, understanding these issues is essential for researchers, veterinarians, and policymakers. There are five key areas in which regulation is required, and these areas include animal welfare legislation, study design and justification, consent and ownership, data collection and reporting, as well as regulations for clinical trials. We will try to examine these key areas one by one, starting with animal welfare legislation. The objective of animal welfare legislation is to ensure humane treatment of animals under research conditions, and these objectives are governed by three R's principle, which are replacement, which is intended to ensure that non-animal objectives are used where possible. Non-animal alternatives are used where possible. Reduction, to minimize the number of animals used. And lastly, refinement, which aims to improve welfare and reduce suffering. So these three R's principles are used to ensure that the objective of humane treatment of animals under research conditions are ensured. Animal welfare legislation can be from the national or regional laws which set housing standards, feeding standards, and care standards, or it may be from the institutional animal care and use committees, which will review the proposed protocols and after going through it, approve the protocols for the commencement of the research. The second key area is the area of study design and justification. Under this legislation, it is to ensure clear scientific rationale such that there is justification for why alternatives cannot be used. The implication of this is that the study design should justify the reason why non-pets or companion animals cannot be used for the study. Under this category again, it is important to ensure appropriate species selection based on their biological relevance. Statistical power is intended to optimize sample size for valid results and to also ensure humane endpoints, that is, to set criteria to minimize suffering by the animals. The third key area that requires legislation is the area of consent and ownership. There must be informed consent in which the owners of the pets and companion animals are fully briefed and made to understand the objectives of the research, the risk involved, and the benefit therefrom at the end of the research, either to the researcher or to the pet or to the pet owner or to all of them. This consent and ownership legislation also involve the ownership, defining the ownership and responsibility. This is to take care of the critical understanding of who is responsible for the care and cost that will be incurred during the procedure and the protocols. And the owners must also have the withdrawal rights, in which case the owner should be able to opt out at any stage of the research. Legislation concerning consent and ownership is very important in this regard. The fourth area is the area of data collection and reporting. In recording and documenting the data, records must be detailed and should cover area of husbandry use, details of the procedure used or to be used, and the health status of the animal. The data collection and reporting legislation should also include ethical reporting, in which case the researcher adheres strictly to the guidelines approved by the user committee to ensure transparency. And data collection and reporting legislation also ensure that adverse events are properly documented, such that reports of unexpected outcomes are properly and promptly reported. And the last key area in the regulation is the area of regulations for clinical trials. There must be regulations for good clinical practices. So the veterinarian must adopt and adapt standards that ensure the study integrity. And secondly, the regulatory authorities must oversee the whole process and the protocol to ensure compliance based on their jurisdiction. Now let's look at challenges and considerations in this area of legislation and regulation. Now the challenges include the fact that in different areas, in different regions and locations, there are differences in the framework to complicate the studies, and such differences need to be harmonized such that the harmonized regulation can govern the study and researches that involve the use of companion animals and pets in researches. There must also be continuous debate on the need for justification and welfare prioritization in companion animal research. Where possible, there must be advances in research which will reduce the use of companion animals to specific areas, in which case we need alternative methods that will excuse companion animals from being used for researches and clinical studies. In conclusion, regulations are to ensure both ethical treatment and scientific progress. And like we have said earlier, this must be balanced. Researchers must understand the legal and ethical responsibilities that are on them while using pets and companion animals for clinical trials and research. We also need to look at the future direction so that there is increased focus on alternative methods and stricter welfare standards while using pets and companion animals for researches and clinical trials. This is our lecture for today.